everyone. Welcome to another edition of Flipping the Pages. I am so happy to introduce Rebecca Reynolds here today. She is an author of the short story collection, This Is How We Speak. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm originally from Maine. I grew up in a very small town in Maine. I moved to Massachusetts after college, and first to Boston and then to East Bridgewater. So I've been in East Bridgewater now for close to 20 years.
Yeah.
I have 3 sons. I usually say boys, but they're not really boys anymore. They're 12, 16, and 19. And I work full-time at the East Bridgewater Public Library. I work in the children's room, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I've been writing and publishing my stories for many years. This Is How We Speak is my first published book. It came out just this past April and was published by Cornerstone Press, which is a small publishing house based out of the University of Wisconsin.
Oh, right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. How did you begin writing?
So, I don't really remember a time when I didn't write. So I suppose as soon as I learned how to write, I started writing stories. I think as a child, I was pretty quiet and shy, and writing was just a form of expression that I felt comfortable with and safe with, which is still true. I still prefer writing to speaking, definitely, but all through grade school, high school, college, every teacher I had at some point would say, you're a writer. You can be a writer when you grow up, and I never thought very seriously about that.
Yeah.
It was just something that I enjoyed and I loved to do. My senior year of college, a professor I had who I was very close to pulled me aside and she said, I think you should think about MFA programs. So that's a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing. And that was really the first time I'd ever heard of that kind of a program. I didn't know that was a thing, that you could go to graduate school for writing. So she kind of planted the seed for that. But it was still a few more years before I would do that. I graduated college and I moved to Boston with some friends and I just worked. I was a bank teller. I took writing classes and I kept working on stories, but I didn't really know what to do with them. I didn't know how to make them better, and I felt really stuck. So around my mid-20s, I did apply to schools. I ended up going to Emerson College, which is in Boston. Yeah. They have a really excellent MFA program there. It's a 3.5-year residential program. And when I started, I was so intimidated and so nervous and so scared, and I felt like everyone else knows what they're doing and they were so accomplished, but it was a really supportive environment, and the teachers and students were really great, and I became comfortable with sharing my writing and receiving all that criticism and feedback and learning what to do with it. And by the time that I graduated from that program, I had started publishing stories. I published a couple at that point, which I think are actually in this book. Oh. And, so I really credit that program with making me a writer.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what is your writing process?
So, it's messy. I don't have a great process.
Yeah.
It's a lot of trial and error for me. Even after all these years,
yeah.
I write many, many, many drafts. So, 30, 40, 50 drafts of stories is what it ends up taking for me. I try different things. I see what works, what doesn't. It's a slow process. Every time I go into a story, I go into my Google Docs and I make a copy and I number it and I try something. And if it doesn't work, I backtrack and I try again.
Wow, okay. And how does short story writing differ from writing a novel?
Well, I think it would differ quite a bit. I've never written a novel.
Yeah.
I've tried. I've made attempts. I've written, 30, 40,000 words into a novel. For a novel, definitely, I would need an outline. I would need a plan. For short stories, I don't outline. I don't think too much about it in advance. The short story form is very, very rigid, actually.
Yeah.
It's, you can bring a lot of creativity to it, but it's a very constrained form. You're looking at 12 to 15 pages. Every single word has to matter. There's no fluff. There's no room for extra, a line that you just like. If it's not working, it doesn't fit. So for me, I think of short stories like a puzzle, kind of. I've got my character, I've got my conflict, I've got the setting, I've got, the transformation, and then I have to work with those puzzle pieces and putting them together until I get the picture that I want.
Yeah, that's very interesting. We haven't really talked to someone who who a short story writer. We've had different authors, so that's really interesting. I know your collection of stories were published in several places. You had mentioned that. How long did those stories take you to write? Like, how you said you thought one of them was one of your first stories, so that's a big span of time.
Oh, yeah. So about 20 years. I mean, the individual stories didn't take 20 years, but I collected them over about 20 years since graduate school till now. And most of the stories that are in the collection were previously published, which is kind of a standard thing for debut collections.
Okay.
They don't really take you seriously until you publish most of the stories.
All right.
Which is very different, again, from a novel, which you definitely wouldn't want to publish previously. But so I just collected kind of all of my published stories until I had enough that I felt were strong enough for a book.
Were you the one behind picking what went into that compilation, or?
I did.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So I picked them. There was one story I wrote just for the collection, but most of them had not been written with that in mind. I just went back through my stories and found the ones I thought would fit. Okay.
And on that note, is there a running theme throughout your story? You just mentioned what would fit. So.
I think so. I mean, it is important for every collection to have a theme. Whether or not the reader can discern it, but it needs to be for the publisher. That's important. So I think that my stories are tied together by the theme of parents and children. Okay. Most of the stories have to do with mothers or fathers or children or some variation on that theme. Yeah. There's one story about an aunt who raises her nephew, but again, that's parenting.
Right.
So that's how I decided what got into the book.
Okay. All right. What is your favorite part of writing?
So my favorite part of writing a short story, I think, is finding exactly the right last line. For a short story, that last line is really, really critical.
Okay.
It's, I think, different from a novel. In a novel, the last part of a novel is kind of spread out. The whole last chapter is the ending, or even several chapters may get you to the ending. But in a short story, it's really just the last line. And in that line, kind of everything is tied up. And I kind of think of it as that last line universalizes the story so that it goes from being just a particular moment about a particular character and makes it about some bigger human truth.
So it's like summarizing your theme, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really important. And I never know what it will be until I get to it. I can never predict it, but I know it when I see it.
So it's funny you mentioned that the last line, because I've heard so many people talk about the first line needing to have that impact as well. So this is the first time I've heard anyone emphasize the last line in their story.
Right.
So
I mean, I think it's more important. Right. I mean, of course, the first line gets you into a story.
Right.
But you're left with the last line. That's what leaves the feeling in the reader.
Okay.
So, I have stories. There's a story in this collection, The Visit, that I rewrote that last line so many times. And I would write it one way and I would send it out and it would get rejected. And I'd write it another way and I'd send it out and it would get rejected. And I finally, I think, hit on the right last line, and it was just the last line that was changing. I sent it out and it was accepted right away. But that last line made all the difference.
Wow, that's really so interesting. What's your least favorite part of writing?
Yeah, so, and I think this is different from a lot of writers, but I hate starting. I hate starting a piece. When I go into my laptop and I go into Google Docs and I open that blank document and I'm looking at a blank page, I have so much anxiety about that. It's really hard for me to get going. There's just so many possibilities. And narrowing that down is hard for me.
Yeah.
Once I get into it, I'm fine. But those first few lines are tough.
That's interesting too, because I feel like that's probably also a common thread. So I'm really interested in what inspires you in your writing. Do your short stories give you more idea? Like,
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Would it generate more ideas in a longer form piece of writing?
Right. So I mean, I think everything inspires my writing. It can be a memory or an observation or a person that I meet. There's a story in here called The Battle, and that was based on, I had met a woman and she was telling me that her son, who was young, was interested in Civil War reenactments. And he wanted to go to a Civil War reenactment. And for whatever reason, that intrigued me.
Yeah.
And I wrote a story about that. So it can be really anything that I pick up on. But in terms of, is there more or less with short? I think the thing I love about short stories is that, they are short. So 15 pages, I can do several at a time, and often do work on a few at a time. So I'm not limited to just one idea.
Okay,
and
yeah.
I can play with different ideas. With a novel, that's such a commitment.
Right.
And I think that's what's really daunting to me about writing a novel and why I haven't written one yet. The thought of sitting with one idea for 300 pages, 400 pages. I don't know, I feel like I might get bored.
Yeah.
So, I love that short stories give me the flexibility to bounce around to different ideas and to try a lot of different things at once.
Okay. What is the best advice you've been given for writing?
So there's so much good advice out there, and honestly, I've taken all of it to heart. But something that stands out to me is a teacher at Emerson who was actually giving me criticism on my thesis project, which was a collection of stories. She told me that I needed to like my characters more. She said, you need to care for them. And it was the first time I'd ever heard anything like that, and it really struck me because at that time in my writing, I really thought of my characters as kind of like props.
Okay.
They weren't real to me. They were characters. They were like these voodoo dolls, and I could stick pins in them, and I could make them suffer, and I could give them horrible qualities, and and I thought that made the story interesting. But actually, I think it had the opposite effect of making my characters kind of flat. And so I really took to heart what she said, and to me, what it meant was when I'm writing characters, I need to love them. And if I write them with compassion, then that will come through to the reader, and they will like the character as well, right?
Okay.
But if I don't like them, they're not going to like them.
Do you ever have a character, though? I know I'm jumping around. Do you ever have a character who you really despise, and even that energy is impactful to your writing? Or
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what interests me. I love the characters with a lot of flaws. I like to give them a lot of bad qualities.
Okay.
And I do think that's fun. And that's what draws me to them. But I tell myself, always find that vulnerability in them. There has to be something, show what they love. If I can show what that character loves in one moment in the story, then that makes them a real person.
All right.
And gives them that nuance.
That's great. What advice would you give to someone who wanted to be a writer?
So, and this is very boring advice, but I think it is true. Be patient. Be patient. It's a long game. If someone had told me when I was 25 that I would not publish my first book until I was 48, I turned 48 2 days before it came out. So, I would have been so discouraged. I would have thought, oh, that's too old to do anything. But now I'm 48 and I have a book, and it's wonderful. And this is my timeline, and I'm perfectly happy with it. But I do think, everyone has that idea in their head. I have to publish by 30, by 40, by whatever it is.
Yeah.
I have to have this many books or whatever. It takes the time that it takes, and writing is slow. It is so slow. And even after you write something, you have to send it out, and that is slow. And even after it gets accepted, I mean, it took me 2 years from signing the contract to having the book come out.
Okay.
Just the publication process was 2 years, and that's standard. So again, it's slow.
Yeah.
But you do need to have patience with it and just let it happen the way that it needs to happen.
Okay. As a reader, what is your favorite genre?
So, I would have to say, and I think this sounds kind of pretentious, but I think literary fiction is what I'm drawn to. And what I mean by that is not anything, fancy or snobby, but just character-driven books.
Yeah.
And it can be anything. I read a lot of more, I guess, obscure writers maybe, but I also read mainstream writers, absolutely. Like I love Elizabeth Strout. I think she's amazing. Lauren Groff, Ann Tyler. There's a lot of writers who I think are very popular and I love. And then a lot of writers who are not very popular that I love. And working in a library, I know that my tastes are a little different from mainstream tastes often, but...
well, there's a book for everyone,
right?
Right,
That's
there
what
is,
we
say.
Yep, definitely, yeah. And I, no judgment. Everyone should read what they love to read.
Exactly,
so.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite author?
I have many.
Okay.
So
you mentioned a few. Just
right.
now.
I mean, I have so many. There's not enough time for that, but I would say I would definitely like to point out the writers who I reached out to for blurbs on my book. So I have blurbs on my book. You can see these are the writers that I reached out to review it because I respected their work so much and love them so much. So I would say Mary Miller is one. She writes novels and short stories, and she has a collection called Always Happy Hour. That is a book I've gone back to time and again. Just I think it's wonderful. And Colleen Alice is another one. She writes everything. She writes short stories, poetry collections. She has a YA novel, an adult novel. She just came out with a novella. Her books are winning awards like left and right. It's amazing. But she has a collection called Close to a Flame, which I read and loved. I read it in one sitting.
Oh.
So that's why I reached out to her for the blurb. And finally, Jessica Treadway. She was actually my teacher at Emerson.
Oh.
She was my favorite teacher.
Was she the person who advised you to love your characters, or was that someone else?
She wasn't actually that person.
Okay.
She gave me a lot of good advice, but she did mentor my thesis.
Okay.
And so I reached out to her for a blurb. She has at least 4 novels, and I'm not sure 3 or 4 collections that are wonderful. And when I reached out to her, and of course she agreed to give me a blurb, she told me that her latest collection was coming out also through Cornerstone Press, which was my publisher, and also coming out on the same day. So we share a publisher and a publication date, which for me was just an incredible moment.
Yeah, that must have been for your favorite professor
yes.
and you on the same plane.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I admire her so much. And that
fantastic.
was really amazing.
And you alluded to some short stories, yet your favorite authors are writing short stories. Do you have a favorite collection of short stories? Do you read a lot of short stories?
I do read a lot of short stories. I read so many. And I don't know if I could tell you a favorite collection. I would definitely recommend anything by Lori Moore. Any short story collection by, she has a lot, and I think they're just amazing. Amy Hempel, I think she has One Reason to Live. That's just an incredible collection. There's so many. It's hard to pick.
Okay. Do you have a question that you wish someone would ask you?
Yeah, so I do have a question, and it's kind of a trick question, and I'll tell you right now that there's no answer, or I don't have the answer,
right.
But I think it's important to talk about it, and that is, how do you balance motherhood and writing?
Oh, that is a good question.
Or balancing motherhood with anything, for that matter, which is, it's very hard. So,
and work, because you're doing all 3.
Yes. And I bring it up because it's something I struggled with a lot, particularly when my kids were younger. For many years, I just found it so hard to write. And, I had a lot of shame about that, that I was a writer who didn't write. So, that's not a writer. I would feel bad even if I could get a few hours here and there to go off and write, then I would feel guilty about that.
Leaving your
because then I was working at something that I was already failing at anyway, and it took time away from them. So it was a really hard time.
And yet you still made the attempt to keep writing. How did you?
Right. I mean, I did. I just kept plugging away.
Yeah.
And I didn't ever really give up. And, it got easier. And it does get easier. And now my kids are teenagers, and they don't need me around all the time. They don't want me around all the time.
Right.
I can go write all day on a Sunday, and they don't care.
Yeah.
They're fine. It took a long time to get there.
Another bittersweet moment.
It is so bittersweet.
Yeah.
It is. I love being a mom. And I loved it when they were younger, but it was really hard too. So, and I think that that's something a lot of women go through, and it's worth acknowledging that it's hard for women to balance that or not to balance it, just to deal with it.
I'm really interested in this as well. Do you find it you're up late at night trying to squeeze that in, or are you an early morning rider?
I'm an early morning.
You're an early
I
morning
can't
rider?
stay up late. My husband would be like, "Oh God, I'm asleep by 9." I just can't do it. Even when I was in graduate school, I couldn't stay up late. I get up early. And there were times when I'd get up at 3 or 4 a.m. and try to fit it in. And when the kids were younger, I could never be quiet enough to get up without waking. It just didn't happen.
They have radar when they're little.
Yes.
They know.
It just never worked. There was no good time. Nap time, maybe, but you never know how dependable that is.
Right.
So, it was just really a hard time. And I'm a writer who needs time. I can't write on my phone while I'm in line at the grocery store. Some writers can do that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's not me.
What are you working on right now?
So I'm working on a new collection. It's linked stories, and it's kind of based around a fictional town in Maine.
Oh.
Basically the town I grew up in,
Yeah.
but let's say it's fictional. So I'm working on that right now. I just have a few stories going toward it right now, but that is my hope to have that done in the next year or so.
So are you pulling from past work as well to be able, or is
I'm
this
not.
like...
It's nope. So it's all new, which is really, really exciting for me, because with this collection, I went back to the past and pulled stories, and now I feel much more intentional with this collection, which is a lot of fun for me to explore these ideas and to see how they fit together. And I want to have recurring characters and kind of make it more cohesive in that way.
That's awesome. I'm so excited for you. How many stories is, I don't want to say required, but is optimal for a collection to be published?
So, I think it would go by length,
Of the story.
book length. This collection has 13. I wanted more, but that's what worked out. You need at least, I think it's usually 40,000 words is a minimum for a collection.
Okay.
I think this one's around 50, somewhere in there.
Oh, all right.
Certainly they can be longer. They can't be much shorter, though.
All right, that's good to know too. Where can we find your body of work? I know obviously in your collection this is How We Speak, but
Yeah,
for your other published works.
So I don't have them pulled together I do have a website, RebeccaReynoldsWriter.com. I don't have links to my other stories just because a lot of them were published in this book. I didn't want to have them in both places when this was coming out. But that is where I will link other newer publications. I also link them to my Instagram page. So I'm on there as well. I don't do much on there, but I'm on there.
Okay. What type, this just popped into my head, what type of publications do you send your stories to? What are the types of places that would accept a short story?
So there's a lot. So I send to literary magazines, and there's tons. When I first started 20 years ago, there weren't that many, and you knew the good ones, and you knew where to send it. And at the time, you still had to send them in the mail. I think I actually sent a few off by mail. You'd have to send a return envelope in there so they could send it back to you. Now, of course, it's all email and submissions online. And there's so many magazines right now. There's hundreds.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of sifting through to see which story fits which magazine. Of course, I know a lot of them now just from being, having previous publications. But there's a lot out there. A lot of them are digital only, but some are still in print as well.
Okay. I know Emerson used to have, or I don't know if they still do, they had their own.
Yes. Yep, they still do.
They still do.
Yep, I published my first story in that. So Read a Writer was their literary magazine, and still is, as far as I know. And I think it still comes out in print as well.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Is it?
Read a Writer.
Read a Writer.
Yes,
okay.
So it's a weird name. It's a palindrome? Is that what it is?
The same front. Yeah.
I believe that's...
I totally missed it when you said it.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Yeah, so I remember that. That was my first published work was in there. So I do... It's a great magazine.
Awesome.
And of course they have Plowshares as well.
That's the one I was thinking of, Plowshares.
Yes, so Plowshares is it's a wonderful, wonderful magazine. I've never been published in it.
Ah.
It's very hard to get into, but it's excellent.
That's great. Well, I hope you are able to get in there sometime. And I really appreciate you joining us today. This has been a great conversation.
It has been
for
great.
me.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Jocelyn.
so
It's been
much.
fun.